Our next guest is going to weigh in on the administration's Intel stake, future deals, the U.S.-China chip war, and so much more. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick joins us this morning. Mr. Secretary, it's great to see you. We want to talk about Intel. I also want to ask your thoughts, by the way, on the Lisa Cook situation. But let's start with Intel, because I think there's a lot of questions in the business community this morning about what the administration's intention is as it relates to buying stakes in other businesses. We just had John Stankey, the CEO of AT&T, on, for example. He's doing a deal with EchoStar around broadband licenses. By the way, those licenses are U.S. licenses. The government, you could argue, subsidizes those things. And, of course, the question that we raised was, what do you think about the possibility that the government's going to come and say, hey, we would like a piece of your company, or to buy one through our sovereign wealth fund, or what have you?
Well, I think the Intel deal was a great example. The Biden administration gave, G-A-V-E, gave Intel, an American company, $11 billion grant in exchange for nothing to help them build semiconductors in America, which would be a really good thing. But why would you have, talk about corporate welfare. So Donald Trump sits in the room with me and Lip-Bu, the CEO of Intel, and says, come on, we've got to make it fair for America. And we agree. We get 10% of the company, which brilliantly equals $11 billion.
Now, Mr. Secretary, I don't want to relitigate the history, but just for context, and I hope you'll agree with what I'm about to say. At the time that the CHIPS Act was put together, and we could critique and criticize the CHIPS Act all you want, the idea was that we were trying to incentivize companies to do something in the U.S. that they thought was relatively uneconomic, meaning they didn't want to do this. And so the idea was, how do you incent them effectively to do that? Most of these companies wouldn't have taken the money necessarily if equity was required on the other end. The world has changed. Obviously, the tariff policy and everything else that's been put in place, and obviously Intel's, frankly, own challenges and troubles put them in a more diminished spot. But in terms of just contextualizing what's happened here, is that a fair way to think about it, or do you think that the original CHIPS Act was just completely mishandled?
I think the latter. The CHIPS Act was mishandled. You've got TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation. It's worth $1 trillion. It's $1 trillion company with an almost monopoly on making wafers that you break into chips that we all know. And they agreed to build $65 billion plants in America. And the Biden administration gave them $6.5 billion, or 10%. As soon as I took this office, I called C.C. Wei. He's the CEO. We sat down and negotiated, and I said, look, this is ridiculous. I'm going to take back the $6.5 billion. This is just a corporate giveaway. You've got to do better for us. And if you remember, he came to the White House and announced $165 billion of investment. That's what I'm talking about. At least let's make sure America gets the benefit of the bargain.
Why do you think that all these companies didn't do this prior?
Well, the Biden administration didn't even know how to ask, right? You've got tariffs, and you've got a real businessman, both as the Secretary of Commerce and as the President of the United States, pushing these people. Micron was getting a $2.5 billion grant to build $25 billion. They now upped it to $200 billion. Texas Instruments from $23 billion to $60 billion. Let's get the benefit of the bargain. You've got to push these people. You can't be a pushover. The Biden administration was just a pushover. That's all it was. It was just a giveaway of money, and the Trump administration is just not that.
Howard, it's Wilfred here. Great to speak. Long time no speak. My question on this, following on from what Andrew said, is what is the bar for the government to deserve a stake in a company for free? Because lots of companies are potentially now beneficiaries, domestic U.S. companies, of your tariffs. Is that enough to warrant a 1%, a 2%, a 3% stake for free?
No. And free is a funny way to say it. It's correct in that the Biden administration had contracted $11 billion out the door, and Donald Trump and the Trump administration turned that into $11 billion of equity. But the money was already out the door. So I think the key is, where is the United States of America adding fundamental value to your business? If we are adding fundamental value to your business, I think it's fair for Donald Trump to think about the American people. I mean, one of those issues was we give hundreds of billions of dollars to universities, hundreds of billions of dollars to universities, and they keep the patents. Don't you think America should get a stake in the patents, that we finance the research? We give the money. I mean, if it was commercial, we surely would get a piece of these patents.
What about defense companies, though,
for America?
Secretary? Why shouldn't the U.S. government say, you know what, we use Palantir services, we would like a piece of Palantir. We use Boeing services, we would like a piece of Boeing. There are a lot of businesses that do business with the U.S. government, that benefit by doing business with the U.S. government. I guess the question is, where's the line?
There's a monstrous discussion about defense. I mean, Lockheed Martin makes 97% of their revenue from the U.S. government. They are basically an arm of the U.S. government. They make exquisite munitions. I mean, amazing things that can knock a missile out of the air when it's coming towards you. But what's the economics of that? I'm going to leave that to my Secretary of Defense and the Deputy Secretary of Defense. These guys are on it and they're thinking about it. But I tell you what, there's a lot of talking that needs to be had about how do we finance our munitions acquisitions. I think a lot of that is talking. And now you have the right people in the jobs and Donald Trump at the head thinking about what is the right way to do it. I tell you, the way it has been done has been a giveaway.
Mr. Secretary, it's Leslie Picker here. As we're kind of thinking about this concept of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, would the administration commit to having an independent board oversee it? How exactly would these stakes be assessed to prevent politicization?
Well, let's be clear. There's no sovereign wealth fund now. We're not spending the American taxpayers' dollars on anything, right? Biden gave away $11 billion, and Donald Trump took back, right, an equity stake for the money that Biden had given away. We're not starting a sovereign wealth fund. What you're going to see is you're going to see a national and economic security fund built with the Japanese money, the Korean money, and other countries' money. They're going to give us money to build our infrastructure out in America. Those are the deals that Donald Trump made, using his tariffs, not using the money from the tariffs, but using the commitment of these countries that fundamentally understand a strong and powerful America is necessary for the world to be successful.
Mr. Secretary, I'm really interested in how you personally would see it if another country did something of this ilk back, because I know how much you don't like non-tariff barriers.
You mean like China does it every day?
Yeah,
China does it every single day?
That's exactly what I want to ask about, because I totally get that perspective on China, and it's obviously led to so much of the last year's policy towards China in the last decade since President Trump came in. But what about from a UK perspective? You've struck a deal with the UK, and I know we got better terms than some other countries. And I know you're against, for example, the digital sales tax, and there's still discussions going on there, and that's seen as a non-tariff barrier. What if the UK started to take stakes in domestic companies that kind of act as a China-like approach to this? No, but does that count as a non-tariff barrier?
I mean, you're not really thinking about the fact that the UK government nationalized British Steel a couple of months ago?
Yeah.
So I mean, really?
But I'm genuinely asking about that. Do we get punished for that now? Do we deserve to be?
No, you don't get punished for it, because what they did is, what happened is a Chinese company bought British Steel, put British Steel out of business, and was just importing, subsidized Chinese steel, put the British steel industry out of business. And the British figured out, along with the Trump administration, teaching them that you need steel to be a real country to be able to defend yourself. And the British figured that out. They nationalized British Steel. And now, because they nationalized British Steel, America can do a deal with Britain on steel, because otherwise we would just be inviting the Chinese in. Imagine British Steel was really Chinese steel.
Mr. Secretary, so let's just base case it. So we just put it on the floor here, because I think, as I said, a lot of business leaders and other policy leaders are watching you right now. What types of circumstances would amount to the U.S. government and the administration deciding to take a stake in the business, either for free or buy-in or something else? Just so that everybody understands what we're actually talking about.
Okay, so if a company comes to the United States of American government and says, we need your help, we want to change everything, right? NVIDIA goes to President Trump and says, I'd like to sell a new kind of chip to the Chinese. I know it's not allowed. I'd like to do that. Will you work with me to do that? I think that's a question between the CEO and the President of the United States of whether he will listen to them and change the rules. And if he's willing to change the rules and he wants something for it for the American people, then that sounds like a good idea to me. And there are other times where if the United States of America is completely making your business, or I'll give you the example, we need rare earths, right? We need rare earth magnets to make motors in America. The Chinese had closed that off, and they were threatening us to not deliver that, and were choking us with that. So what happens? The Chinese have a 90+% market share, and they choke this business. You can't be in business because they sell those magnets for half, put you out of business, so they have 100% market share. That business doesn't work unless the United States of America gets behind it. It is time for America to make sure we win in business and we win in foreign policy, and that's what Donald Trump is doing. If you require and need the United States of America, Donald Trump is going to think about it, but he's going to make sure the benefit of the bargain is earned by the American people, not just giveaways all the time.
Mr. Secretary, how concerned are you, though, about competition under these type of circumstances? And maybe more broadly, the idea, and maybe you think it was a failed idea, but the idea that the U.S. Exports the idea of free markets, exports the idea of capitalism. We have been quite critical of national champions for years when other countries have pursued them, putting China aside, Europe and others. And we have tried, I think, to be a role model. You may say that being a role model has not succeeded to the extent we'd want, but I'd like to think, at least on the margins, it's helped. Are we now moving into a new era of what you might describe as a free market capitalist, of what this all even looks like generationally now?
Well, I don't understand. I don't understand the thinking. I mean, the CHIPS Act gave $50 billion to companies, right? Why don't you think America can sell a car in Japan or in Europe? Why do you think? Because they subsidize the cars. The governments subsidize the car companies and help them. Where do you think your VAT money goes? It's a subsidy for the car companies in the back door. This type of competition has been going on as long as I have been alive, and probably a century before then. America needs to basically make sure we are in the game, we are being treated fairly everywhere in the world. And giving away money versus getting equity for that money, I find it shocking that any of you are thinking about it. We gave them the money for free. Do you think, seriously, do you guys think giving them the money for free is better than when we give them the money, we get equity for it? If they didn't take our money, that would be great. But if they're going to take our $11 billion, shouldn't America get shares?
Mr. Secretary, the truth is, in the short term, you are 100% right. 100% right. It's significantly better economically for the taxpayer to receive something for it. I don't disagree with you at all. The question is what the long-term implications of doing that are, at scale and more broadly on how other countries and other industry thinks about interacting with us in the future. That I think, is the fundamental, sort of larger, more philosophical question. But maybe that's a question for another time, because I have a whole bunch of other questions I need to get to with you, Mr. Secretary, including this. I just want to remind
you that most countries in this world subsidize their important industries. And we are the least at that. We didn't tariff and protect, and we didn't subsidize. And what happened? We had a $1.2 trillion trade deficit that was exporting our economy to other people. Think about it. Here's one of my favorite statistics. In 1985, we owned $140 billion more assets in the rest of the world net than they owned of us. And today, the rest of the world owns $24 trillion more of America than we own of them. We have exported our money, and they are buying America out from under us. And Donald Trump is here to stop that leakage.
Mr. Secretary, I do need to pivot to a different question around Lisa Cook, governor at the Fed, who has been fired by the president for cause. She says she's not going and that he doesn't have the authority to do such a thing. You're obviously in the administration, close to the president, also understand how the wheels of just the machinery of the government work. Who pays her paycheck, for example? Is that something that has to come directly from the Fed? Is that something that Chair Powell will have to turn off, if you will? Does she have a pass to get into the building as somebody turns on or turns off? And who does that?
So, I don't know the details of who has her paycheck or not. But the issue is a federal government, a governor of the Federal Reserve, literally signs her name and commits mortgage fraud, right? It's alleged that she's committed mortgage fraud, and she says, I'm not going anywhere. Well, the crook always says, I'm not going anywhere. And why would anybody defend that? The real question should be, did she commit mortgage fraud, yes or no? And if you did commit mortgage fraud, please get out of the federal government, get out of the seat of the governor of the Federal Reserve, and go away. You don't deserve to be there if you've committed mortgage fraud. Right? It's black and white. If you've committed mortgage fraud, you shouldn't be a governor of the Federal Reserve.
This is a domino effect. One of the reasons I'm asking you this question about who needs to turn off her badge or turn off her paycheck is if the answer is that ultimately Chair Powell is the one responsible for that and he chooses not to, then the secondary question becomes, does the president try to fire him for cause?
Well, these are all what-if scenarios. The answer is the Department of Justice will go take this on and deal with this. But the fact is, if this woman committed mortgage fraud, she should be respectful to the United States of America, to the Federal Reserve, where she says she cared about them, and she should go off into the sunset and hope to God the police don't follow her, right? Mortgage fraud is a serious crime. We can't have mortgage fraud in America, and you surely can't have it for your leaders. I mean, imagine anyone in the cabinet who did this. You guys would be calling for their head. This woman should go away if she's committed the mortgage fraud, and those signatures sure as heck look like hers.
Obviously, it remains a big if at this stage. Howard, a broad question. So much of the last 6-9 months since you've been in your position and the president's return to office has seen a question of the establishment gets too worried about things. You announce policies as an initial reaction, and then everything calms down. When you look, and you know markets better than any of us, you look at the reaction in the dollar today and the U.S. bond market, or the non-reaction, essentially, at the prospect of greater influence from the government towards the shape of the Fed. Is this an example of that?
Well, I think the market has learned that the Trump administration is doing an excellent job for the United States of America economy, right? Stock market is at their highs virtually every day. Bond market is steady, and it should be lower. We all agree interest rates are lower. I mean, if the Federal Reserve actually cared about the United States of America, they'd understand that they could cut interest rates, cost the United States of American taxpayer less money. Remember, each 1% of interest rate cut is worth $360 billion a year to the American taxpayers over time. If we can have lower interest rates, the Federal Reserve is supposed to deliver us lower interest rates for the good of the American people and the good of American economy. So the economy is doing well. We're running at a 3% growth rate. Everybody had, hair on fire running around. But what's happened? Tariff revenues probably running at $50 billion a month. GDP growth at 3%. stock markets at highs, steady bond markets. It sounds like the Trump administration in complete control and doing the right thing for America, one step after another, doing the right thing for America.
And Mr. Secretary, we got to go, but I do have one final question. Becky Quick was on the air earlier, and we were talking about trains and potentially a transcontinental train merger. Would the government allow that?
Well, I think what the government wants is a smooth interchange between the East Coast and the West Coast. You know, the way these railroads work is one railroad is east, one railroad is west, and they take 2 or 3 days to take the car from one train to another. We want that to be smooth. I'll leave that to the regulators and to the people who are in charge of those decisions, but we want an interchange, is what it's called, to be smooth. Whether they do that by mergers, alliances, and they work it out, we want smooth intercontinental railroads. Imagine in 2025 talking about trying to make it smooth to take a rail car from the East Coast to the West Coast. But that's where we are. I think we want it to be smooth. How they get there, I'll leave that to the experts.
Okay, Mr. Secretary, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. Always appreciate talking to you about all of these big issues as we're all trying to make sense of them. Thank you.